Francis Ngannou coming back to the UFC. Francis Ngannou's coach Eric Nicksick said that Ngannou is very open to a return to the UFC. I will tell you why obviously he is open to return and why he's not in the driving seat anymore and probably has to settle for a lot less in this video. Hello and welcome to Bloodsport MMA.
Assalamu alaikum everyone.
Eric Nicksick, the coach of Ngannou and very close friend of Ngannou as well, came out on a podcast and said the following. Enough time has passed. I would love to see them mend these fences and get back to competing in the UFC. 100% Francis would be open to return to the UFC. I think it's more about business than it's about ego. At least it is from Francis' side. Now, where does his motivation come from? It's not about money, it's about competition. And the best competition is in the UFC. Now, those are very true words because that is also where the source is of Ngannou's desire to come back to the UFC. Because when he left the UFC, he got promised the world by PFL and he thought he has the craziest contract and whatever. And hey, he made a lot of money, which is very good for him. I'm so happy for him. He definitely deserves that. He made a lot of money with his 2 boxing fights. And he also earned quite a lot of money for his PFL fight, the one that he had. But we have to look at the facts. He parted ways with the UFC a couple of years ago. Since that, had one single MMA fight that ended in 1 or 2 minutes or something, so not really much octagon or cage time, right? Had 2 boxing fights that he lost, both, of course, against Tyson Fury. He shocked the world and everything, but he still lost. He lost 2 of his 3 fights that he had. The 2 of them were in boxing. He had 1 fight in MMA that he won against a guy that, of course, had a little bit of hype because of his huge size, right? There was some story to tell there, but not a guy that is like elite competition in any way. There's a reason why Renan Ferreira was not in the UFC, right? And the problem that Ngannou has is the competition thing that Eric Nicksick mentioned. There is no one in the PFL. The PFL, first of all, cannot pay Francis Ngannou. That's why he's not fighting. They cannot afford him because the PFL is very bad in business, in doing business. And they gave Ngannou a contract where he earns a lot of money, plus his opponent is guaranteed, I'm butchering it, about 2 million, I think. Every single one of his opponents is guaranteed that purse. And last time Ngannou fought, they couldn't even sell out half of the arena. The pay-per-view did like a couple of thousand pay-per-view buys. They lost a lot of money with the last Ngannou fight. And they have 0 contenders in the heavyweight division that have any kind of name, that have any kind of value, and for that reason, they cannot put on a fight for Ngannou. They have no one to fight him. Whoever would fight him is not deserving of $2 million, right? He will never bring that back in revenue. The whole fight will never bring that revenue back. Ngannou will not bring that revenue back. It's just a big losing business for the PFL. And the PFL is already in a horrible state where they can't put on more than 2 events a year or something, and all the champions are not getting any fights, right? Ngannou is old.
I'm old.
Ngannou is not young, right? So that's why his whole, to the first point, the competition is why he wants to go back to the UFC. I completely believe that because there is no one to fight there. He can't get any fights. In the UFC, there's plenty of good fights, right? Now, the problem is he has 0 pull at the moment. He's not in the driving seat anymore. When he left the UFC, he had negotiating power. He had power to, of course, he wanted a little bit too much. He wanted things that the UFC will just never do, like sponsors and on your shorts and stuff like that. The UFC will never do that for anyone, definitely not for Ngannou. But he still had power to negotiate a nice purse. He would have earned a nice purse. Now, the problem is if he comes back now, there's a lot of water under that bridge. First of all, first factor, he and Dana had a little bit of a feud because he talked some shit about Dana, Dana talked some shit about him. And Dana is still the boss. And you have to go back to the boss to get back to the UFC. And he will definitely not give you a nice contract for that, for the whole past, right? Plus, your stock went down since then. As I said, you had 3 fights, lost 2 of them, 1 of them you won. Everyone has forgotten about it. I haven't seen anyone talking about that fight ever since it happened, right? And you are old. It's not like you were a 33-year-old heavyweight where it's like, hey man, you still have like 5-6 years left. Come back, we would love to have you back, you're elite, come back. Ngannou is still elite. Ngannou is still the guy in a way. But he's old. And at this age, the UFC does normally not sign people that age. And of course, in the heavyweight division, you can fight until you're 40-something, but normally, even there, around 40, you start to decline, right? So the UFC will not make him a nice offer, if they even will make him an offer, because Dana can be pretty salty. But I do believe that the UFC would take him back, just because if he comes back for a shitty salary, that's great for the UFC. Because I have to be honest, as a fan, Ngannou versus Tom Aspinall, in my opinion, call me crazy, is the best fight you can make right now. I am more interested in Ngannou versus Tom Aspinall than I am in Jones versus Aspinall or Jones versus Ngannou. Because Jon Jones, his mind is off the game. He's not really in there anymore for the fighting purposes, right? And Jon Jones is not a heavy-hitting heavyweight. Jon Jones against Aspinall is just, can Jon Jones somehow evade the strikes of Aspinall and take him down and just, yeah, maybe submit him or grind out the decision or something. With Ngannou against Aspinall, it's like, bro, Ngannou, Aspinall. Ngannou is an underrated grappler at this stage. I mean, he won his last fight by pure grappling. He won against Stipe with his grappling. He won, well, he knocked him out, but you saw what he did with his grappling there, took him down and stuff like that against Stipe. He won the Cyril Gane fight with his grappling. Like, Ngannou's grappling is underrated at this stage. Plus, Ngannou has the power, the exact same power like Tom Aspinall. They both can match each other with that one-shot KO power. So this is a much more interesting fight to me than any of the other matchups, right? This is the most interesting fight for me at the moment. And if we don't get it now, we will never get it, because, as I said, Ngannou is at the very end of his professional career. And I would love to see that fight. I think Ngannou versus Aspinall, whoever lands the first big shot, that's it. And both are so good in those fights. Both show that they can take a punch, they can land a punch, they can grapple. They are willing to grapple as well. And I do think that's a great fight to make, especially with Jon Jones playing mind games with the UFC, with retired, not retired, this and that. And the UFC could also shoot some shots at Jon Jones with that. If they sign Ngannou and say, hey, we'll strip you, Jon Jones, from your heavyweight title and make Ngannou versus Aspinall for the undisputed title, that might tickle Jon Jones' pickle.
This guy tickles my pickle.
So I do think it would be smart for the UFC to take Ngannou back. I do think, though, that Ngannou lost all his negotiating power and would just have to accept whatever the UFC offers him, because there's nowhere else to go for him. Where does he want to go? One championship? Even worse than the PFL in the heavyweight division, right? There's no one else to go for him. The UFC is the only way for Ngannou if he's not retiring. So I would love to see that coming to fruition. Ngannou back to the UFC 1 or 2 more years before he retires, and there's some fun fights to make there. What is your opinion about this? Write in the comments, like this video, guys, subscribe to the channel, become a member, all the good stuff. Check out the merch, link is in the bio. Stay bloody, you guys, and until the next one, bye-bye. Bloodsport out.